Welcome to the world of tomorrow. You are about to take a journey out of this world into the world of the future.
The atomic age was born.
The world of tomorrow became the world of today, bringing together all people in a new era of understanding.
Good sense requires that all of us prepare for any eventuality.
Imagine, if you can, an electronic brain operating at millionths of a second speed.
Electrical pulses transmitted with the speed of light.
Limitless power at man's command. On man's wisdom, on his firmness in the use of that power, depends now the future of his children and his children's children. But wisdom demands, too, that we take time to understand this force.
Combat Information Center is alert. Its radars probing the darkness, ready to give early warning of any unseen enemy.
But have no fear, we are monitoring the situation. Well, everybody is kung fu fighting. Now, everybody is in on monitoring the situation. That term has become more popular in the last 24 hours than I think I've ever seen it.
You know, we saw it, I think, the first time a couple of years ago. And I don't even remember what the original, what inspired monitoring the situation, but it has absolutely exploded.
Yeah.
Really.
And when I picked up on it, and I was like, you know what, this is what we do all the time.
Yeah,
Why don't we just call the show that? But like at the time that I said that, it was, it was a little bit of a meme.
It was niche. It was a niche meme.
Yeah. I was like, oh, it's got a little cultural cachet. That's cool. And it's descriptive. It's what we do. But I did not expect for it to become like the word du jour.
Yeah.
Every time something happens, and especially guys, man, guys are like, my wife doesn't get it.
Yeah, it's right. The memes are like, guys like to monitor the situation, and their wives and girlfriends are like, wait, what?
What do you do?
What's happening?
Yeah.
I knew it was bad when you sent me a late night text, which I didn't see until the morning, because I'm sure everybody knows I'm Mr. Early to bed and you're Mr. Late to bed.
Dude, I don't have these bags and dark circles under my eyes for no reason. It's been a week of 4 a.m. bedtimes for me.
And you just simply texted me like, dude, this is my Super Bowl.
No, but it is though.
Yes, it is. It's better. It's better and sad and crazier and
yeah, like it's
scarier.
I feel like I'm cheapening it by saying that, but there is a sense in which geopolitics in real time is the most fascinating and intellectually stimulating thing to pay attention to, because it has like real world effects. And if you're a kid who got lit up by the history books, because you could imagine, oh wow, what was that like? When you're going through history, when you're going through it, it is absolutely fascinating. So obviously, we decided to start a war with Iran. Like, how long has it been? Has it even been 24 hours?
It hasn't been 48.
Okay.
I woke up on Friday morning, I believe, to Twitter just blowing up.
When did the strikes start, though?
No.
Was it Friday night or Saturday night?
Might have been Friday night.
If you have access, if I switch screens, it's going to
go ahead.
Change the lighting on me, which is already bad enough.
Yeah, I mean, so as of this recording, epic fury in the early hours of February 28th, 2026. So
yesterday.
Yeah, we're barely past 24 hours.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay,
yeah.
So that makes sense.
Doesn't it feel like it's been a week already?
Yeah. Well, it's been nonstop developments ever since. And the thing that I'm worried about, and I kind of wanted, this is why I wanted to do something today, even though it's a little earlier in the week than we usually do it, is because Iran has just issued a fatwa. Whatever remaining, the Ayatollahs seem to be on an assembly line, or like there's a vat of clones. They all look exactly the same, and every time they pick a new one, we kill them, and then a new one comes out. Yeah. So, but whoever it was that issued this fatwa is basically like America. All Muslims are called to jihad against America. It's a moral obligation. So, we've had a number of attacks in the last 12 hours or so, 12 to
Yeah.
15 hours.
Yep.
Not all of which are necessarily terrorist attacks. I mean, this is part of the fog of war, right? So we've had things go on. There was the attack in Austin last night. That was clearly Islamic related. I mean, the guy was literally wearing a sweatshirt that said property of Allah.
Yeah.
And he was a Senegalese guy. It's a majority Muslim country. They're not known for being, terrorist producers. But the thing is with Islam is anybody can get radicalized at any time, right?
Right.
So that one is definitely being looked at as a terrorist incident. And this guy's got a history, by the way, of harassing people online. He has the very anti-Semitic way of looking at things. He attacks people online all the time. He's been active on Twitter, saying this stuff. It's funny because when we talk about the anti-Semitism and stuff on X, and then people are like, well, Twitter's not real life. And it's like, well, it was for the people in Austin last night, and 3 of them are dead.
Right.
So I think that this is one of the reasons why you and I both feel we kind of have an obligation to stay tuned in to what's going on, because it spills over for real.
Well, so we've got the one in Austin, and then just earlier this afternoon there was a multiple stabbings on the Beltway outside of DC.
Yeah, and so we don't have a lot of details about that yet. I just saw something right before we got on the air saying there were rumors that there was a crash and that people got out of their cars and that one person attacked another person. So is it terrorism? Is it road rage? We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously a mass stabbing on the Beltway is a pretty random thing.
It's an eyebrow raiser, right?
And inside the Beltway, there is a large Islamic community. I used to live there.
In fact, right off the Beltway, there's a huge temple you can see from the road.
Yeah, so there's all kinds of crazy.
A mosque.
Yeah, there's crazy stuff. Well, there's a big temple you can see from the road off the Beltway too. The Mormons have that like fairy tale castle.
Oh yes, gold. Yes.
And then there was something in Cincinnati last night where 13 people got shot, but we don't know if it was inner city type stuff or if it was there's not a lot of details on that. And then there was a one where nobody got hurt, but up in Toronto last night, some guy who was flying the Persian flag in his store window had the store window completely shot out, right?
Wow.
But this was all before the fatwa was issued, right? So these are just organic, spontaneous episodes of mass violence that are suddenly happening, almost like the world is just picking up on this vibe.
Boy, calling it organic, I think is accurate, potentially accurate here. But boy, isn't it chilling to think that homeborn terrorism, we're able to call it organic, Steve?
Well, I mean, it's organic in the sense that it was spontaneously generated by the minds of the people who perpetrated these acts of violence. Nobody was telling them, hey, you should go do this. Now they've been told. And one of the things that I just reposted a thread that I put up early 2025 from Sarah Adams, who did the Sean Ryan show last year. And she's an intelligence analyst. I think she used to be with the CIA. Can't remember. But she talked about how there are thousands of trained terrorists in the country waiting to be activated, and they know this. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, who knows what else. I saw her today tweet something about how they believe there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 18,000 of these terrorists. But they knew there were 1,000 trained Al-Qaeda terrorists that were planning one attack when they got activated. Who knows? And see, part of the problem is whenever you try to comment on this stuff, when you're not a scholar of these things, is all these divisions within Islam, the Sunnis, the Shiites, all this kind of stuff. And then you see Iran has attacked like 13 Muslim countries because who knows why?
13 Muslim countries, including France.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, they attacked a French naval base.
Okay.
But they didn't attack France directly.
Yes.
But they did attack Bahrain, and they attacked Dubai, and they attacked
Saudi
Oman
Arabia.
Earlier today. And Saudis, did they get hit, or are they
I thought
just
they did,
angry?
but again, fog of war. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's a lot going on. I mean, just before I got on, Representative Anna Paulina Luna posted a list of all the Islamic countries that have now been hit by attack drones or missiles from Iran in the last 24 hours. They're just lobbing things at everybody right now. And so this is the thing. Also, I didn't even mention this. Our consulate in Karachi, Pakistan was attacked by a mob, and the Marines had to repel invaders, and 32 people are dead.
Wow.
Like, this is not, and the scenes were crazy. I mean, it was mob violence, and I don't think they're done. I think they've now come back to the embassy or to the consulate again. So it's like hot zones are popping up absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, are we going to have a Benghazi type situation?
Well, so this is the thing that people, I think, don't understand about Iran. If there is a terrorist movement anywhere in the world, there's a better than average chance that they're funding it somehow. They funded Hezbollah, obviously. They fund Hamas. They have been, I mean, the U.S. Central Command posted a thing saying since, in the last 47 years, since the Islamic regime has taken over, they have killed over 1,000 Americans. 1,000 Americans.
Yeah. Directly. And then indirectly, that number, I mean, you can't tell the story of the Iraq insurgency without Iran.
And by the way, Iran-friendly Iraqi militias are now starting up in Iraq too.
Right.
And they're starting to attack things. So, you know, and again, so Iran and Iraq have always kind of been at each other's throats because the Iranians are Shiites and, and the Iraqis are Sunnis. But when it comes right down to it, yes, the Muslims will all attack each other within their various factions, but they would rather kill the rest of us first.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's like, I don't really care what brand Muslim you are. If jihad is your thing and it's one of the central pillars of Islam, you know, it's not peaceful struggle, despite what some of them say.
Well, in clearly, it's a kind of version of a. And this sounds gross, so I'm just bear with me. But it's like a version of a corporal work of mercy for them, right? In other words, it's like a way. It's a pathway. It's a pathway to blessedness, and that's just a chilling. That's just a chilling concept that I really don't think we Western types, right? You know,
I mean, some do, obviously. Part of the problem is I think we're in a bubble, right? So, you know, particularly within the very conservative or traditional Catholic bubble, you see a lot of times, like, you know, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you're a saint. If you're a fundamentalist Muslim, you're a suicide bomber. Like, there's just a huge difference between what fundamentalism means in one religion versus the other.
Sure.
It's not to say that there are no wonderful Muslim people who are like, I don't want a part of any of that. But the religion itself praises these acts of violence and puts them within a context of holiness. And so that's like, it's fundamentally and diametrically opposed to what Christian fundamentalism would.
Yeah. You know, so, all right, well, I mean, maybe we should back up here a second and, you know, look, we along with the Israelis went in, you know, a little bit over 24 hours ago and basically knocked out the government, you know, the Ayatollah and apparently all of
a lot of his top brass.
Top brass. I mean, you know, you look, you know, Steve, as a fellow monitor, you know, you've been banging this Iran drum for the better part of 2 weeks, and you were following with, you know, the movement of materiel and personnel into the region. It seemed pretty clear. I believe it was around the beginning of the Olympics, in which we had these massive movements of things, and so it really looked like, yeah, this is going to happen. And it was hard to tell for me whether this was some kind of flex on the part of the administration as a sort of a negotiating, you know, like sort of putting your gun on the table and being like,
they call
make
it
a deal.
Gunboat diplomacy.
Yeah. You know, and so, you know, you've been kind of on this, but I mean, just trying to step back. I mean, what do you make of this, the attack itself?
Well, I mean, the pattern that I see is we know what Iran is. We know what they're willing to do. They've killed over 30,000 of their own people just this year, I think.
Well, literally in the past
March
3 weeks.
1st. So, you know, they're willing to do whatever. We know that, you know, back in 1979 during the Islamic Revolution, I don't know why I can't talk today. There was they held over 400 American hostages, or no, they held hostages for over 400 days. American hostages for over 400 days. Mixing up my numbers in my head. But you know, they have been funding all kinds. I mean, they build or fund the IEDs that kill American soldiers in other countries. There's so much proxy warfare going on, and the Iranians are smart. They They're not Al-Qaeda. They're not the Taliban. They are much more strategically oriented, I guess I would say, in terms of what they do. They have redundancy systems. So like we keep taking out their leadership and they've already got somebody ready to take over. They have a decentralized command structure already set up. So today I saw that they're saying, well, if our guys are attacking people, we warned them not to attack the other Muslim countries, but they're kind of on their own. So it's like they made it so that if you cut off the head of the snake still writhes, basically.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we could negotiate with them and get them to stop what they were doing, and even that is multi-layered, right? So Trump was really focused on they cannot have a nuclear weapon because they have shown that they are willing to commit acts of violence for pretty much no reason to their own end. They're genocidal. They want to wipe Israel off the map, all this stuff, right? And in June of last year, we took out their nuclear sites, but there were rumors. Again, we're very much speculating in the dark here. So everything we should say today should be taken with a big grain of salt because the intelligence is not all being made available to the public, and we're just riffing off of what we see. But there were rumors that they were trying rapidly as possible to get any uranium they could, even if they can only build a dirty bomb. Like not even fully enriched.
Yeah.
There are all these things that we don't know in terms of why the negotiations not only failed, but the timetable moved up. I do think that your instinct was right, that we positioned all these assets to basically say, look, you destroy your nuclear sites or we're going to do it for you. And we're showing how serious we are because we've committed money and personnel and resources and all this stuff, right? And they wouldn't budge. They just wouldn't budge on it. But something that we still don't, I don't know what lit the match. And I don't think we've been told what lit the match yet. But something moved up the timetable with a certain degree of urgency in the last 48 hours. Because Trump was talking on Friday about how they were still negotiating and things weren't going great.
Right.
And he said something along the lines of, we don't want to have this be a war, but if we do, then we will. So I don't know what happened, but when it happened fast.
Mm-hmm.
So my sense was that was a lot of words. My sense was they were never going to negotiate with us, and we knew it because they don't negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
They don't back down from their position. So I think when I was saying things like, it feels like the boy keeps crying wolf because we keep saying we're going to do something and we don't, but I think the wolf is coming. I said that, 2 days ago?
Yeah.
And then yesterday, or whenever the day was the attack started, it was either Friday it was Friday because the attack started around. Trump came out and gave his speech announcing that it was happening at around 2:40 a.m. on Friday night into Saturday morning.
Exactly.
And so it was Friday. I posted something. I'm like, does anybody else, does the vibe feel off to you guys?
Yeah, you were definitely on that.
There was some feeling of heaviness in the air that something was coming. And I don't know how I pick up on that, but that's why we monitor, right?
Yeah. I think it's so, so a couple things, after the Iraq debacle, I have become much more temperamentally dovish, as a sort of a default position. I, like many of us, were angry in the aftermath of 9/11. And, you want somebody to pay. And, Colin Powell goes up and offers us all the reasons in the world that we, have
weapons
to
of mass
now.
destruction and all this stuff, right?
All that sort of stuff at the UN. And, I believed it. And, the initial war was quick. And I do think people forget that, the initial war was quick. But the aftermath, and there was there was a period of time, maybe it was a couple of months, maybe it was several months, but there was a period of time in which it looked like the job had kind of been done. And now we were kind of trying to figure out how to manage this. And, we were promised, of course, by Dick Cheney and others that, they would, and Don Rumsfeld, that we would be welcomed as liberators by the people. So I've got that floating around in my head. And admittedly, back, when I was a much younger man, I really wanted to believe all of it. I believed, what was it, Bush's second inaugural, this soaring rhetoric about, human beings by our nature, long for freedom and all those kinds of things. And I really wanted to believe that in some real way. It turned out that was wrong, woefully wrong. And that has sort of been part of my sense-making frame ever since. And, just deeply skeptical about foreign entanglements and all these kinds of things. And, the track record is bad. It's really bad. And at least from the vantage point of, winning and losing. But so when this all goes down in the early morning hours of Saturday, I'm like, whoa, like, wow, we're not messing around. And of course, I also now have, the Maduro situation floating around in the back of my head. And so my initial hope was like, wow, it's kind of badass. I'm definitely leery and scared, but kind of badass. And I want it to go well from the vantage point of my country. But I'm really nervous, man. I'm really nervous about the aftermath. And just last thing, Venezuela is just a different beast of a thing
Sure.
than Iran.
No, it is. I mean, Iran has a much larger scope. It's got about 10 million people. It's a country about the size of Alaska.
Yeah, physically, yeah. Which is huge, by the way.
It is a large country. But I also think one of the big distinguishing factors here are the Iranian people who are,
right.
I heard one of the, and it's interesting because it's Iranian women. We should really call them Persian women because that's what they prefer to be called. Mm-hmm. And that's part of it here too, is that the Persians have this long and storied history.
Yeah. Pre-Islamic, by the way.
I don't know whether it's historically accurate. They give themselves credit for inventing human rights 2,500 years ago,
algebra.
And they really do. Like they produce good scientists. They produce a lot of, they're very cultured. Like you get the sense when you see them that there's something much deeper here than you see with like the people in Afghanistan and the Taliban. There are deep roots and a sense of history. That's just very, very different than sort of the cavemen with AK-47s, that you get with a lot of these other places.
Yeah.
And the Iranian people have been, in many ways, very inspiring because they're like, please bomb our country.
Yeah.
And the fact that they went out unarmed in the streets and got mowed down and kept going out every night.
Yeah.
I just have never seen anything like that. I don't know if you have, but
no. I have the same kind of emotional response to that, right? And this is the difficult thing, right? So you've got, you've got this country, Iran, and since '79, it's been a Islamic theocracy. I'm not sure what the technical term.
That's correct. And they call themselves a republic, but it's a psychopathic Islamic theocracy.
And so you have but it's despite its kind of very religious and serious and observant ruling class, there's a huge secular population in this country. None of which, of course, are in the leadership positions for obvious reasons, because the test is, do you sign on to the various fatwas, right? And so, we saw immediately everybody dancing, people are excited, and yet you've got seeded, 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 across all these different countries, exactly the kind of religiously inspired zealots, I guess is really the word that I would want to use here, that are apparently in our country, assuredly in many capitals in Europe, in England. And, I just don't know how this thing is going to go, because with Iraq, the militants were there, right? They lived there. It wasn't like things were popping off in other countries, and so therefore we have to talk about the situation of the previous administration and the obvious, clear, open border situation that we lived through under the Biden presidency. And I don't think people recognize it wasn't just millions of Latin Americans that were going up through the Darien Pass, I believe it was called. There were Chinese nationals, there were Middle Eastern nationals, there were African nationals.
A lot of fighting age men from countries that consider themselves our enemies.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
they're here. They're in the
Yep.
United States of America. Neither of us are going to give out our precise locations, but I joke, right? Because everybody knows where we live. But,
Hey, Rhode Island's a big place, man.
yeah, it's huge. Yeah. But, how are some sizable chunk of those people who just came into the country under Biden's open borders policy, are they gonna activate?
I mean, so my gut level radar has been screaming that it's going to be a miracle if we don't have more mass casualty events in the next 24 to 48 hours. I just, the fatwa's been issued. These people are everywhere, and I texted my family and I was like, stay out of crowded places for the next few days. Just try to keep your head on a swivel, keep your face out of your phone, look around, make sure you know what's going on. Fortunately, hopefully, maybe nothing will happen. I mean, to most people, nothing will happen, but that's how terrorism works.
Right.
You get an attack in a few places and everybody's like, well, it could have been me. And that's kind of the game. You don't have to win big numbers. You just have to win the fear quotient.
Yeah. Right. And so what kind of backlash are we looking at? Obviously, we don't know. I mean, you and I are, again, sharing our sort of thoughts and reactions and feelings sort of live here, like in the moment. I do find it a little curious that besides Trump's post at 2:45 Eastern time Saturday morning, I have not seen anything from the administration. They haven't taken advantage of the bully pulpit, as it were.
No, they've done comms through their separate channels. CENTCOM has been posting stuff.
Okay.
Department of War has posted some stuff. I think there might have been a statement from the White House here or there. I don't know. I saw a press clip of Trump today, but because I wasn't sure if it was filmed today or if it was something that he said about the issue previously, I didn't really do much with it. But I mean, in it, he said, look, somebody had to do something. At some point, somebody had to do something. And that's the thing that I think people don't get. This was a growing and imminent threat. If you want to see the best commentary on this, look for Marco Rubio did an interview. I think it was with Fox News. And then he just laid out the case. And I mean, man, that guy has become brilliantly articulate about this stuff.
Yeah.
Just really hammered the points home that this is long overdue.
Yeah.
And here's another thing that I don't think a lot of, people our age potentially, but even younger especially, know. The reason that the Islamic theocracy exists in Iran is largely because of CIA meddling in Iran.
Yeah, that thing. Good. Thank you. Yeah,
because they had an elected prime minister in Iran in the I think it was in the 50s, and then the CIA wanted somebody that they could control more.
A kind of regime-friendly regime.
And so but this has all been declassified. You can look it up. I can't remember the name of the operation off the top of my head, Ajax or something like that. But we went over there and basically fomented a coup, planted, I don't know if it was false flags, false evidence. I don't know the whole history on this, but we basically did things that led to the prime minister being put out of office, and then the Shah of Iran, and Shah is just the Persian word for king.
King, yeah.
It's a monarchical designation. We raised what is his name? Pevlani? Is that it? something like that. I'm so bad with these names because they're not familiar to me, so I don't remember. But basically, he became the Shah of Iran, and he was Western friendly, and that was what we wanted. But he was also, over the course of his tenure, increasingly autocratic. He used this Sava secret police to torture people and do all this stuff. And he created so much resentment that it led to the Islamic Revolution of 1979 that installed the Ayatollah system.
Mm-hmm.
And so, had we not messed with the democratic system that already existed there, we wouldn't have wound up with this. So in a way, it feels to me like we're kind of righting a half-century old wrong. We made this problem.
How much do you think people are in general are aware of the deep level of CIA meddling in the aftermath of the Second World War, Steve? What's your sense of that?
I don't think many people. I wasn't. I've watched some stuff. I've read some stuff about it. There's this guy, he's an ex-Mormon documentary filmmaker who did stuff on YouTube. Actually, I haven't seen his stuff recently, so I don't know if he's still producing. His name is Johnny Harris, but he did this really, really concise, like 20 or 30-minute documentary about all of the regime change stuff that the CIA did over a period of 10 to 20 years, starting in the 50s and 60s. And it's crazy how much we have manipulated governments around the world.
And I think it's important, this is really not tinfoil hat stuff. And I say that because growing up, I had an Uncle Jimmy, God rest his soul, who was all on this beat, in the 80s. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, my crazy Uncle Jimmy, he always sees the CIA everywhere, and it's like the boogeyman. And, it's, it almost the way in which, anti-Semites, smell the Jews everywhere. Oh, it's the Jews, right? And so I had a kind of heavy layer of Teflon with this whole CIA story for a really long time. And finally, I started, things became declassified, and I started reading around, and now I just have a completely different frame with which to appreciate our childhood. We talked about this in another episode, but we grew up in the so-called post-war consensus, or the Bretton Woods Compact, and that was largely a creation of first the OSS and then eventually the CIA. And I just don't think that, in Normie land, people understand just how much was done, and just how much that did, in fact, foment a lot of anti-American sentiment around the globe.
Yeah. Well, and the lengths that the CIA was willing to go to, it's for a different episode, but you and I have both read two different books on Project MK Ultra.
Right.
And I mean, the CIA was convinced that other nations had found methods of mind control. And if anybody, look, for me, the entree to this was, I grew up watching the Frank Sinatra version of Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah.
And I think the first time I watched it, I was like 12 or 13, and I was like, holy crap, like that's crazy.
Yeah, I remember I sat down to watch that. My mom actually sat us down to watch this movie because, and this is semi-famous for a couple of reasons. It's a truly chilling portrayal by
Angela Lansbury.
Yeah. I mean, a truly chilling portrayal of a kind of smothering mother who also is like a double agent. Really amazing, an amazing performance. Frank Sinatra, of course. But the reason why my mom sat us down to watch it, she said it's a good movie, but she said, yeah, like this movie was so hot when they made it that they delayed release for a number of years before it actually was released. We watched it on video, of course, in the early 90s, but it was too hot.
Yeah. And they actually did a remake with Denzel Washington, I think, but I never saw that version of it.
I heard bad things about it. I heard bad things about it.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like, it was just such a compelling, I mean, it was basically, if anybody's ever seen Captain America Winter Soldier, the way Bucky Barnes is able to be activated with keywords and he goes into like, Russian killer mode. And he was an American hero, but he'd been reprogrammed. I mean, it's the same idea. It's this brainwashing stuff. And so, I read Jonathan Mark's book on Project MK Ultra, the search for the Manchurian Candidate, and it was about LSD was basically invented, in a lab, and the CIA grabbed it to try to use it as a mind control drug. Psilocybin was brought into public consciousness because the CIA wanted it as a mind control drug. They were looking for ways to do things like program average citizens to go commit political assassinations and then forget that they'd ever done it, so they couldn't even be questioned about.
There was a great movie in the 90s starring Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts called Conspiracy Theory.
Yeah, I remember that.
Excellent film. We should do a screening of that.
Yeah, I haven't watched that in a long time.
but it's the same kind of idea, right? That it had something to do with Catcher in the Rye, which of course was famous because the fellow who assassinated John Lennon had a copy of A Catcher in the Rye in his coat pocket, and that's so long been part of all of this lore. And I'm not sure what to make of that part of the lore, but there has been sort of at the fringes this sense that, bad things have been done in the name of, if we don't do it, Steve, the commies will.
Yeah. Well,
right?
Look, Lee Harvey Oswald too, right?
Right.
The CIA was talking to him 2 weeks before the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and he said, "I'm just a patsy," and then he got killed by another guy,
right? Who also was fully in control of his mental faculties until a CIA psychiatrist visits him in jail, and then shockingly he is unable to speak. He loses. He basically they brain fry him in captivity.
Well, I mean, if you read Marx's book about this, it's Marks, not Marx, like the socialist. He talks about how these scientists that were working on this, it started as Project Artichoke, it becomes Project MK Ultra, and they basically had a tacit agreement that because if you knew that you were being drugged, you would have the potential to mentally resist it.
Yeah.
That they would just spike each other's drinks or food or whatever just to see.
For funsies.
But I mean, it wasn't really for fun. It was
funsies.
experimental. They couldn't experiment everywhere that they wanted to. So they had an agreement amongst the scientists that were working on it. At any time, you could become a test subject. And there was one guy whose name escapes me, but they got him with LSD. They spiked his drink with LSD, and he got into a psychotic episode that lasted months until he jumped off the 10th floor of a hotel in Washington, D.C. to his death.
Yeah.
Like they were doing crazy, irresponsible stuff.
And a lot of this came out later on in the late 70s in the Church Report. But again, it's sort of remarkable. It's remarkable the way in which this kind of stuff happens, right? I mean, that's bad in and of itself. And then, you run a cover story, not a cover story, but like you run a feature in the New York Times or whatever, New Republic, whatever, fill in the blank, Atlantic Monthly, and it just kind of goes away. It's just like, oh, there's that.
Well, and the thing is that they are experts at covering stuff up. I mean, I have talked publicly about my ADHD and book reading problem, but I have this book that I'm trying to get through. And it opens with this guy who wrote it is Matthew Connolly, and he's a professor at Columbia University. He applied for a research grant to use machine learning. This is just a few years ago, 2022, 2023. To apply machine learning to the process of declassifying government documents when the time comes for them to be declassified, because there is such an enormous volume of documents that fall not even necessarily appropriately under the classification system, that there's no way that human review can make sure that the documents that should be declassified are being declassified in a timely manner. And so he was like, what if we apply machine learning to go through this stuff, look for, the clues of this is in the right time frame, this is the right type of material. And the government tried to sue him out of existence. So the book opens with him facing down a bunch of government lawyers who want to put him in jail, basically, for trying to declassify documents. He's like, look, I just wanted a research grant to see if this is a project we could even do. You're so freaked out that I might declassify the stuff that you've done that you're trying to bury me. And that's how the book starts out. So there's I hear the church bells.
You can hear them. Interesting.
Yeah, I can hear them. But basically, talking about MK Ultra and all this stuff in this context is not so much about that. It's about what are the lengths that our government is willing to go to keep secrets, to gain secrets from the enemy, to manipulate the public perception of things, to manipulate governments. The idea that, we're the good guys, which we kind of are on the world stage, but like
Right.
we're still pretty Machiavellian about a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And interestingly, to go back to the Epstein files that we've been talking about forever, something that comes up in the MK Ultra book that I read from Jonathan Marks is they were literally talking about whether they could ethically use child prostitutes to try to extort information out of enemy contacts, or out of people who defect from other governments or things like that. And at the time in the 60s, they were like, that's a bridge too far.
Amazing.
But there was this sense in which they thought, okay, well, what if a guy likes 13-year-old boys? Could we use him for that? And that conversation actually happened.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
So anyway, to bring this, the reason why I bring up the CIA stuff and all of the undercover things that have been going on, it's just very hard to find, for me personally, it's very hard for me to find my grounding because, I posed a question on X, one gets the sense from some people that they believe that peace is the kind of default human
I thought that
condition.
was such a good question.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you picked up on it because I really wasn't being flip. I really am posing the question because if you answer yes to that question, then I don't know what to tell you because there's no solution then to taking care of bad situations, bad guys, evil situations. What is required from my vantage point, is the genuine threat of superior violence.
Yes. Violence is often the answer. Yes, it has been proven over and over throughout history.
And look, what's weird is neither of us are hawks. Right.
No.
I mean, this is what's
I'm
so
a little
frustrating.
jingoistic when America goes in and does stuff like this. I'm like, it's kind of awesome to see us actually being superior again.
Yeah. But what I mean that is neither of us were like, oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait to go in and start bombing people.
No. I actually just wanted the poor people in Iran to be freed from this ridiculousness.
Right. And I remember again, all those years ago, 3 weeks ago, when the Iranians were rising up, in protesting their government, I just distinctly remember oh man, I really hope for these poor. I mean, I was genuinely, man, I really hope for these people that they can do it. They get all mowed down, So so similarly, it's not the wish to expand empire, at least for me, in terms of the way I see things, is I want people to be free, actually. And
I mean, it's simple. I put it simply.
Okay.
I want the good guys who have the power to do it to stop the bad guys who are doing awful things to people. That's and I do think that should be a component of foreign policy.
Yeah, right. And if you sort of think of it, it's I want someone who can to pop the schoolyard bully in the face, because the schoolyard bully only has one love language,
and it's violence.
And
we love those stories when we see them in movies, when we see them in books. Of course, the bully who gets his comeuppance from the guy who actually knows what it means to Jordan Peterson's be a monster but control it. Yeah. Be the warrior in the garden, not the gardener during a war.
Right.
We want to see that warrior who is at his last resort say, I'm not going to let you do this anymore.
Yeah. And I'm no longer sheepish about saying that kind of stuff out loud.
No, I don't care if people like it or don't like it.
Yeah.
And I used to have much more libertarian inclinations. And then I realized, wow, this is just utopian bullshit.
It is.
Libertarianism depends entirely too much on the essential goodness of human beings, and we're not. Some are, but in the aggregate, there's too much selfishness. There's too much greed, manipulation, exploitation, violence, et cetera, et cetera.
And opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really think that, that actually matters in terms of evaluating, but at the same time, there is this sense in which we we have to be careful because America can't continue to be
Right.
world
Right.
cop everywhere that we go. We didn't successfully export democracy to a lot of places, this Wilsonian idea of
Yeah.
exporting democracy, and that's why I think, honestly, what's going on in Iran, we're not there to do nation building. And I thought it was excellent what Trump said in his speech, where he said, when we're done with this, the Iranian people need to go in and take over and form a new government. This may be your only chance in generations to do this. But he didn't say, we're going to go do it. It's like, we're going to go cut off the head of the snake, and we're going to give you the leverage that you need to do the exact thing that you're trying to do so you can be a self-determining people. And even today, he said this was always a 4-week timeline. We're not planning on being in there for a super long time. Like, it's 4 weeks. And, obviously operational theater and conditions are going to update and change as time goes on. And a lot of things are going to depend on the types of violence that are going to happen and what Iran does. And if Iran keeps attacking Americans, they've already killed 3 American soldiers. They're lobbing missiles at our bases and they're taking people out. We have defense systems. We've knocked out 150 some ballistic missiles from Iran the last count that I saw.
Like depots and weapons caches and that
No,
sort of thing?
like incoming. I mean, last night we sent. This is another thing I'm pissed off about. So,
lay it on me.
Well, Diego Garcia is this island that is owned basically by the UK.
Okay.
And they're in the process of selling it to, I forget who, China. I don't know who it is.
Oh, good.
But it's a staging area from which we can use long-range strategic bombers to do things like we're doing now. The UK said no to us for this operation. So our B-2 bombers flew from Missouri 36 hours and last night dropped dozens of 2,000-pound bombs on Iranian ICBM sites because we couldn't launch from Diego Garcia. So these marathon flights where they go out and they come back. And the B-2 is untouchable. It's high altitude. It's stealth.
Yeah.
Like the memes say, it's all fun and games until the sky starts losing pixels because they look like something out of Minecraft when you look up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But we dropped a lot of bombs. And I saw a strategic assessment today saying that in June of last year, we were dropping 37,000-pound bombs. And the reason is because those can penetrate to deep underground nuclear enrichment sites. The 2,000 bombs can only go through 6 feet of reinforced concrete and 20 feet of earth. So therefore, shallower installations where missiles will be launched. So when you know the ordnance that's being dropped, it gives you a profile of what exactly it is they're trying to hit.
So backwards, okay.
Those 37,000-pound bombs can penetrate hundreds of feet underground.
Wow.
All of which is, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, right. Just on the tech standpoint. Yeah.
But we're trying to take out that capacity. There's fear about Iranian hypersonic missiles. We actually do have defense systems against that. Iran has threatened multiple times to take out a U.S. aircraft carrier. We have the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford both in the area. The Gerald Ford's positioning is fascinating because we didn't park it right off of Iran. It's sitting next to Israel because if they launch more stuff at Israel and they hit us, then we're like, well, now you're really screwed. And I don't understand how the ratcheting levels of engagement work. I mean, we're already bombing them.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you hit us back, we're going to bomb you more, I guess.
Well, I mean, my question to you, again, no military expert, you certainly know more than I do. Aren't they going to run out of stuff to send?
The Iranians? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. So this is a good segue.
Who's they?
Well, that is an excellent question. I mean, the Iranian strategy has been dispersal. They don't concentrate everything in one place. So they've got sites all around Iran. Last night, we hit sites that people were like, what? That's in the middle of nowhere. It's because we had really good intel on where all their stuff was. And frankly, that's because of Mossad. I mean, love the Jews or hate them, their intelligence capabilities are incredible. And all these precision strikes came from the fact that they infiltrated the Iranian inner circle. And so we knew where Khamenei was going to be. Like, one of the things the Iranians counted on is they have never been attacked by Israel and the United States except in the middle of the night. And so they had a meeting in the morning and we hit them then.
Wow.
But they thought that their air defense systems could stop us from going in. which, by the way, they got from China. The similar systems, maybe even the same to the ones that were in Venezuela that didn't protect Maduro.
Right.
And so this is a segue.
So that's an interesting, I mean, that's really interesting.
Well, and a lot of their missiles are Chinese too, because China is using Iran as a proxy. But China also buys 80 to 90% of the oil produced in Iran. Now, China is the sort of unseen hand in all of this. And I wrote a little addendum to my Force One piece yesterday.
Okay.
Because what's going on with China is they are the largest net oil importer in the world. They don't have the ability to produce fossil fuels in sufficient quantities themselves. So they import from everywhere. They bought most of Venezuela's oil. They bought most of Iran's oil, and those two together only accounted for 15 to 20% of Chinese oil imports, which is not a crippling amount to lose, but it is a significant, portion. But the bigger thing here is now the Strait of Hormuz is not safe for tankers to go through. And so the Iranians have been, just today, Royal Dansk or whatever, or Maersk, maybe Royal Dansk are the cookies. I think they're the cookies in the tins.
Maersk is the shipper.
Yeah, Maersk is the the cookies, whatever. Yeah. I'm not a geopolitical strategist. Okay?
You're making me hungry, brother. You're making me hungry.
But anyway, one of their ships got hit. And so they're like, we're not going to ship. I saw something about insurance companies are like, we're not going to insure anybody who goes through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if you don't understand the geography, we've already lost the Suez Canal because the Houthis, who, by the way, are also funded by Iran, have been attacking ships going through there. So that's not happening. That's a little bit to the west. The Strait of Hormuz allows Middle Eastern oil to come out around the tip of Africa and go east to China. Well, now the Strait of Hormuz is basically unpassable, and all the ships that were going that way have turned around, and they're not doing that anymore. Now, the only other way to do it is to go around Africa, down under the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, which adds 6,000 nautical miles in 2 weeks to any tanker trip. It makes it unfeasible. It makes deliveries inconsistent. It opens up to piracy and other things. There's all these reasons why. So a lot of tankers are just not going to go. So now China didn't just lose Venezuelan and Iranian oil. They lost all the oil that they get from the Middle East.
Dude, that's crazy. I mean,
so between that and us proving Chinese defense systems don't work, Chinese missile systems can be intercepted, we are also fighting a proxy war through Iran to tell them, if you F with Taiwan, first of all, you're contained now because you have a lot less oil than you need. You have to start stockpiling.
Yeah.
Secondly, your systems are garbage and we can tear right through them. We are sending them the message, you'd better not. And so we're containing a potential Chinese strike on Taiwan, which would be a much bigger, much worse conflict than this one. But by showing them, don't start or we'll end it. And also, by the way, we just took a bunch of your toys away.
So in some sense, it's kind of it's a tech flex. It's a military tech flex too, right? That we, the United States of America, is flexing on. Yeah, we know they've got all your stuff. We know that their stuff is you, and your stuff ain't up to snuff.
Right. And so China's not going to intervene on behalf of Iran, which people thought maybe they would. Russia's not going to do it. And Putin's been basically saying they didn't even want our help anyway, so it was off the table.
Also
not
hilarious.
Not like he's, able to get out of the quagmire in Ukraine.
Right, in Ukraine, right, yeah. He said, how dare the United States of America, invade a sovereign country? And you're just like, dude, irony is officially dead.
Maybe you should sit this one out, Vlad.
Just, yeah.
And obviously that situation is very geopolitically complicated. We're going to get people in the comments because, Russia has been aggrieved by Western influence and
NATO
encroachment. And, we promised them back in the 80s or 90s that we weren't going to be an inch to the east of Germany with our missiles. And we did, we probably, if we didn't have something to do with the 2014 Maidan revolution in Ukraine, we certainly came in with the CIA and set up forward operating bases along the Russian border afterward. Again, we're meddling. We do.
Yeah. Well,
And it's different kinds of meddling, right? You have
yeah.
the very subtle kind of clandestine meddling that the CIA does, and then you have the, hey, we're not going to let you have a dirty bomb or a nuke because you've already attacked us countless times, in other countries over the years, and you're chanting death to America for 47 years. No, you don't get to have a nuke. We are going to stop you because we know that you have literally zero moral qualm about using that on us.
And that's why, I think you and I have talked about this maybe offline, but people are invoking international law and these kinds of things, and I have to chuckle. I mean, look, I'm not a military adventurist, but I really chuckle when people invoke international law. I mean, is there anything more fake than the idea of international law? Yeah, fine. I think it's good that responsible governments around the globe can come together and sort of establish some norms. I'm very for that, of course. But if you're going to crow about norms and international law, then, there's a lot of rocks being thrown from lots of glass houses in this regard.
Yeah. And international law is a construct, and it only works if there are nations powerful enough to enforce it. And if the nation that is most powerful and most capable of enforcing those things is being taken advantage of and threatened, it's going to unilaterally change the rules of the game because it can, and nobody can stop it. And you may not like the Machiavellian will to power. I mean, there are clearly ethical problems there.
Yeah.
But if it's being wielded in a way where we're not trying to take advantage, we're just stopping threats and we're killing deals that are not working out for us. I mean, look, this all goes back to what we have been talking about almost obsessively for the first 3 episodes of this podcast, which is this is the end of the first of the post-war order playing out in real time. Just the fact that global oil shipping just got massively disrupted. And by the way, if you haven't filled up your tank, you should probably go do that. Yesterday I saw gas here was up to $2.99. It's going to go higher. And what's interesting, too, about that is America is actually a net oil exporter, but we buy oil from other places where it's cheap and we refine it and we sell some of it on the market and we use some here. And we have this very complicated system. We get a lot from Canada,
and we stockpile,
from Alberta.
And we stockpile.
We stockpile. We do all this stuff. But we're not going to run out of oil. We have plenty. And that also gives us an advantage. But we also have Venezuela, which has, richer than Saudi Arabian oil reserves. We now control their entire oil reserves. There's an interim government there, but they're basically having to work with us to submit budgets to us so that we say, okay, are we making sure that the oil you're selling is feeding your people because you've been starving them for years?
Yeah. So this, you invoke the post-war consensus, the post-World War order and all that sort of stuff. I'm frustrated by the commentariat that I see on X and on YouTube and wherever we get the news now. And there just seems to be an unwillingness on the part of a lot of folks to face this point squarely. And maybe this is one of the reasons why you and I keep steering back into it, because I just don't see a lot of folks getting the new frame.
No.
And you have versions of this on the right, you have versions of this on almost the entirety of the sort of the left, the public left, the Democratic left. But even just in general, like there just seems to be an unwillingness to admit that the situation, that the conditions have changed. And, you and I can kind of spout off on this, because we can, but there really does seem to be an adult unwillingness to face this. And there seems to be something in, the sort of the professional, managerial, military, political class that they really want to continue to believe that it's 1986.
Yeah, well, I mean, this goes back to your point that you started making, and we digressed away from it, but we should return to it for a minute. The idea that maybe peace is the default state, and it is not the default state, but it It has
It
been
has been, right.
the default state for the lifetime of everybody who is alive today watching what's going on. I mean, with the exception of a few people in their 90s and 100 and their hundreds, everybody alive today is a post Bretton Woods, post-war order person who has lived with prosperity and global trade. And whether you like it or not, or whether you believe it or not, because you don't have any perspective, it has been the most peaceful period of global history ever recorded in the world.
And so therefore you think that's the default, like that's just the way things are, right? I'm reminded of, I'm sure you've seen this guy on social media. He's an interesting fellow. He wrote a book, but he became sort of internet famous, intellectual, circles famous for his idea of luxury beliefs. His name is Rob Henderson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love the idea. Basically, elite people can signal a certain way because they don't have to live with the downstream consequences of the content of that signal. And it feels to me like being a member of the post-war consensus is a kind of luxury belief. It's funny. It's like, it's kind of privilege talk, and what was necessary to create this wealth bubble, this wealthy cultural bubble that you and I grew up in, what that cost was always buried. It was always covered, and it always ran downstream.
And it was always backed by American military.
That's right. That's right. In other words, it's being held together by an atlas of sorts, right? Holding up this world and kind of protecting it. And that world is two things. It's fake. Fabricated is probably a better way to say it. Like it was made, it was constructed, and it was pretty cool, but it just no longer holds. And so what it costs in money and attention and material and all this sort of stuff, what it costs to keep this thing going has shifted and changed, I guess.
Well, and this has been this administration's big push is we're tired of being taken advantage of. And most succinctly put, I saw this great tweet that somebody did when the campaign started and we took out all the stuff really fast. I mean, we took out Khomeini the first day.
Yeah.
After all the threats he made and everything, it was just like Maduro.
Yeah.
And this guy tweets out like a video of the airstrikes and he goes, "Now the world understands why we don't have free healthcare."
But yeah. So why is that? It's perfect, right? Because it brings together costs.
Yeah, because we're spending $1 trillion a year on this stuff, and the countries that are under our protection that don't have to can sit there and scoff at us because we don't have their little quasi-socialist systems where everybody gets, 6 months of paternity leave and free healthcare and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you have that because you don't have to have a huge military. You have that because your money's not having to go to other things.
And the great sin of our elite class, right? The great sin is that they passed the costs of that onto and therefore destroyed the middle and lower classes, the working classes of this country, right? And at the same time, they got wealthy, like super wealthy and super powerful. And so, you want to, I've always maintained that Trump is a symptom, not a cause. And I still believe that. And, you and I are not going to sit here and defend every damn little thing that he does because he drives both of us crazy too, right?
This is important though.
But his willingness to be like, well, no, like why are the Davos people getting rich off the backs of mom and pop, here on Main Street, and the unwillingness of our elites on the left and the right, the DC crowd, the New York crowd, the LA crowd, the San Francisco crowd, and all of which each of those cities represent, The unwillingness to face the truth of downstream costs has been sort of the ultimate luxury belief. And that's how you get this guy. That's how you get
it's
Orange
also,
Man.
look, here's the thing. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine online about this over the last couple of days. And he's a former military pilot who's been deployed multiple times and, flew a gunship and did a lot of terrorist killing himself, and we were talking about Trump. And I was like, what people don't get, what they under index about Trump is the same thing that drives many people nuts about his ego and everything else is also the same cluster of attributes that makes him unbelievably formidable and decisive when it comes to saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. He doesn't care what anybody else thinks.
He really doesn't.
He believes in what it is that, his position is, and he's going to act on it immediately, and he's going to sleep well at night. And he has made our military lethal again. I mean, it sounds ridiculous when you hear him going on and on about I built and rebuilt our military, but he did. Like, the men, the trans dude in dresses and the other kin guys in military uniforms wearing dog masks and all this stuff. We are reminding the world why we are in the position that we're in. And that reminder was necessary because everybody had started to think we were weak. And Russia and China absolutely were depending on that. And Iran was depending on that.
Depending upon what exactly? What do you mean?
The idea that we're weak, that we're feckless, that we'll make threats, but we won't back it up. Obama was dropping pallets of cash in Iran. Yeah. He was trying to pay them off. And we're like, no, we're not going to play that game anymore.
I still can't believe that happened. Like, how can your conception of human nature be so blinded by a kind of utopian do-gooderism that you can drop pallets of cash on the Iranians because you think that's why?
I don't even understand what the rationale was for it, but it certainly didn't help. They just turned around and used that money to fund more terror.
I mean, it's like giving a heroin addict, $100. Well, he said he was hungry. Yeah. Guess what? He's going to go dumpster dive for some leftovers, and he's going to go buy $100 of heroin.
Right.
Duh. Right.
Right.
Wow. This is.
So this is the thing, and I don't know whether this is a leftist problem or just a general human problem, but this idea of theory of mind, where I have a conception of what people who think very differently than I do how they might think about things. There's a certain wall that we all hit in terms of being able to understand a completely different world. The meme about Trump saying they have to go back, about immigrants and stuff like that. But when you bring third world people over and they come from a completely different culture with a different understanding of human rights and human dignity and all this stuff, when you bring Muslim guys over who are willing to kill their own daughters because they do something that dishonors them, or I have a friend who was a JAG in Afghanistan. And if you don't know what a JAG is, Judge Advocate General, they're basically military attorneys, right? He went over to Afghanistan and he told me that one of his jobs was adjudicating civilian claims. So if the Americans damaged somebody's property or, ran over their sheep or whatever, they could come and fill out a form and we would compensate them because that wasn't part of the scope of what we do. Go ahead, because it is funny.
It's adorable. It is. It's adorable.
It's righteous.
It's good. Right. I want to be careful. It's amazing, actually, that we would do such a thing because, just do the simple mental exercise of flipping the script on this one.
Right. Nobody does this.
Imagine, would the Iranians give you and I JAG rights to be pissed off about our broken wheelbarrow?
But we live by our principles, even when
Amazing.
we're there, right? But the problem is they took advantage of it. And so he said what he found started happening, and maybe it had been happening before he went, is the Afghanistanis started to run a calculus on what got them the most compensation. And what got them the most compensation is if their children got killed.
Oh, my God.
So they would take their toddlers and basically push them out in front of U.S. convoys so that they would get run over because they'd get the maximum dollar amount.
Man, that's dark. That's dark.
And he's like, and when I question them about it, when I interrogate them about it, no compunction, no sense of grief or loss. I'll just have another kid. Like, there was nothing in them that was, and this guy went and voluntarily took this deployment because he had like a 6-month-old daughter who's the same age as my oldest daughter. And he was like, I want to go be deployed now so she doesn't remember me being gone.
Gone. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So he's sitting there dealing with these people who are, sending their toddlers out into traffic to get $4,000 from the U.S. government or whatever the money was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it infuriated him. And, he was in a position to change the statutes and basically be like, you're not going to be compensated if this happens again. But what drove him crazy, though,
gaming Western largesse.
Yeah. And so when we say things in our memes, like, the European mind cannot conceive of Bucky's, well, the Western mind can't comprehend of that shit.
Yeah.
And so we think, oh, they're people just like us. They'll think and act just like we do. No, they don't. They literally don't. There's a video that's been circulating on the internet for years about these African guys who are being asked by this British documentary filmmaker about rape and about, like, did you ever think about the fact that, like, it hurts people? Oh, yeah, the girl might get pregnant and I might be responsible for that. And he's like, you're raping people. Like, did you ever think about, like, what that does to them? And they literally were like, I have no concept of the fact that that's not a normal thing that guys just do and that it would actually cause psychological damage to somebody else.
So here's the truth, right? In keeping with what you're talking about here, Steve, is that, the great Tom Holland, the writer of Dominion, he got blackpilled when he went to the Middle East and was doing some, he's an ancient historian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he got blackpilled for very similar reasons. Details are different here, but nonetheless, the same basic idea. And he understood in a moment that the sort of moral operating system of the people he was there and filming with and whatnot could not be more foreign than he, a modern, secular, enlightened, atheistic Brit. And he just is like, he understood that he was different. And of course, he writes the great thesis, which I think is a very compelling thesis, and I can recommend the book full-throatedly to our audience, but he basically says that whether all of us who live in the West, whether you like show up to church on Sunday or not, we're all Christians, right? And, again,
you're a beneficiary of that framework.
Right. And so, this is not a question about soteriology or ecclesiology or anything like this. So just stop the comments right now, right? But in other words, the very idea that your friend, this JAG officer, goes and he sort of sees through these things, you see a people who don't have the same operating system, fundamentally do not have the same operating system. And so, now I happen to believe that like you can learn these things just like barbarian Celts learn some things, just like some Gaulish pagans learn some things, right?
It's not fundamental to human nature.
Right.
But it's reinforced culturally over and over and over again. Yeah. And when you live in hard places, you're going to develop just a different way of looking at the world and at people and at death and at everything else. Then,
and you see this very dynamic play out in ancient, in the Bible and in the Hebrew scriptures, right? That you had all of these surrounding tribes who worshiped all these other gods and Moloch and Baal and all these sorts of things. And like the big difference between everybody else and the Israelites is that the Israelites had this like wild idea that all of us are made in the image and likeness of God. And so therefore this God did not demand human sacrifice. Anyway, and I don't know if you remember this, but about 6 years ago, Jordan Peterson was leaning really hard into this idea. He said, look, I'm not talking about this as a sort of a personal creed or statement of belief, but you have to reckon with what he called, in his words, the miracle of our jurisprudence is that it rests on this unobservable claim that all of us are endowed with dignity because we're made in the image and likeness of God. And he says, like, this truly is a novel thing, because all you have to do is kind of look around and you see none of that, right? And yet the operating system, that we're talking about here is predicated on that.
Well,
And
if you
we're always
watch,
judged
even
by
if you
that.
watch these shows, and they're not for everybody.
Yeah.
Like the show Rome that was done on HBO.
One of my
the
favorite
show
all-time
Spartacus
shows.
that was originally done by Stars. I mean, there's a lot of gratuitous sex and violence and stuff
Lots
in
of the
it.
horny sex.
Yeah. And so, they're not for everybody. I rewatched the Spartacus show, just finished it last night because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And it's a really different perspective for me now, because it's like, we talk about all this stuff and you just see the way that, one of the things that was in the last 2 episodes is Spartacus has found out that the guy who, became his master as he is trained to be a gladiator had agreed to bring him his wife, as a condition of him kind of submitting. He's a Thracian warrior, right? He didn't want to be a slave.
Right.
But he brings him his wife, or agrees to bring him his wife, as a condition of him submitting and fighting and like doing his best and not causing trouble all the time, because he was really unruly in the beginning and they were having a hard time breaking him. And he's like, okay, I'll do this. But the guy, Batiatus, who is his master, he's a Roman Lannister who trains gladiators.
Yeah.
Like, arranges for his wife to be killed. So she shows up on death's doorstep, having already been stabbed, and he sees her die in his arms, and but knowing that, like, severing that bond means that he's going to become a more docile guy, right? So Spartacus eventually finds this out. He ends up seeing the same guy who had transported his wife, and he has no wounds and all this stuff, and he realizes, oh my gosh, this guy was supposedly injured in this attack, but it was faked. And he kills the guy, and he gets the guy to admit, your master ordered me to kill your wife. And so he goes on he starts this slave revolt. Now, I don't know anything about the origins of the story of Spartacus, or whether any of this is real, but there's this scene where there is a female slave who he has started to become kind of close to after his wife's death. And he tells her what the plan is. And she's like, you cannot. And he's like, I have to. And she goes, you're not familiar with Roman law. If you kill the master, every slave in this household is going to automatically be executed. You sign all of our death warrants,
Right.
And throughout the whole show, just the laissez-faire way with which they murder people because they're higher status citizens, and and slaves have no rights whatsoever, and they
the cheapness with which human beings are treated with
completely different moral framework, and there isn't any justice. Like, there's no, you can't go call the legionaries, the police, and have them come.
No,
because they're all under orders too, and they all
wait. They don't get any JAG representation, Steve?
No, they do not.
I was told that there would be JAG representation.
And so one of the things that's most repugnant about watching shows like this is how immoral, the things are you're seeing on screen. And they're repugnant, particularly to like a Christian conscience. But if you're able to view it from the standpoint of, wow, the pagan world really was awful, it opens a different world. In the Rome show, one of the main characters finds out that his wife ended up, having an affair with another guy while he was deployed for like 8 years, and she thought he was dead, and he had every right to kill her with no consequence.
Yeah.
His wife, not his slave,
Right?
Because he was a citizen,
right?
And it's like,
it's
mind-blowing.
What is the old American Express commercial? Membership
has its privileges.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that is, and look, and I think in certain respects, my frustrations with the commentariat class is that there just seems to be an unwillingness to face that clear truth.
Yeah.
We're
not dealing with the same people that we have here at home.
Yeah.
And so, like, understanding their resolve, understanding their willingness. I mean, it's one of the things that drives me nuts about the Palestine debate.
Yeah.
I had a barber he was a Russian Jew who served in the IDF for a while. And he said the quickest way to get yourself killed on the border of Palestine is to turn your back on a 5-year-old, because they'll shoot you in the back. And he's like, they train them from childhood to do this stuff. And it's like, that is so foreign to us that when we see kids getting killed, immediately we're like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what do you do with a nation of people that raises their children to hate and
Right.
want to murder?
Right.
Because then you take out their parents and they just grow up and get revenge. Like that's the whole.
And I don't want to lose my moral outrage. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Right, but
want to
there's
lose.
there's a
Right.
complex thing here we have to grapple with.
Right. And right. No, that's you anticipated, right? I don't want to lose my moral intuition, but at the same time, I want to have my eyes wide open and my ears wide open because we have to see and hear clearly. And there just doesn't seem to be much of that.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
And so, you know, and you see this across the world. I mean, look at China. China is an ancient civilization, but it's never risen to the level that was produced by the West. And part of that is because they don't have that concept. I mean, China is to this day one of the worst human rights violators in the world. They treat people terribly.
You read stories, man, and it's like if a third of it's true, it's just utterly chilling, which I do think is an interesting, you know, this will take us far afield, but I want to just plant the seed and we can talk about it in another episode. But one of the interesting things to me about the whole Epstein mythos, right? This sort of all these stories that you're hearing, and you know, in some weird way, it's a kind of retrograde emergence of a kind of post-Christian, neo-pagan conception of might makes right. Like I'm a rich, powerful guy. Of course, I can buy 14-year-olds.
Right, 100%. It's the Roman senator who's like, "What are you going to do about it? I'm above the law."
Right. You know, and it's again, membership has its privileges, right? In those kind of elite circles. So, all right, well, okay, so we're not even 2 days into whatever got kicked off in the early morning hours of Saturday. America and the Israelis go in and they take out, you know, the leadership. I mean, what is your sort of gut? And you know, you're a vibe guy. I'm a vibe. But what do you like? What are you feeling about this thing? Is it just too much noise? Is it
about which part?
Like, where is this going to go?
I mean, my sense is, and it's difficult because you know we're not getting the full briefings, right? So we're trying to piece this together, not even from fully sourced, vetted, journalist-driven news reports, but from a lot of the stuff we've been talking about how it's so difficult to know. The information comes in fastest on platforms like X. If you want to monitor a war in real time, that's where you go. But you're also getting filtered information. You're getting it through accounts that may be recycling videos from 5 years ago. You're getting, you know, all this stuff that's just completely unsourced. And so that makes it really difficult. You get faster information and some of it's real and some of it's not.
Right.
And so there are still a lot of Iranian Revolutionary Guard, although I saw something today saying that they're leaving, they're crossing the border, they're trying to get out of the country into wherever, I can't remember if it was Afghanistan or where they're going. You know, Trump did say in his 2 a.m. speech that anybody who is a police officer or a member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard or whatever, you'll get full legal immunity if you lay down your weapons.
Wow.
Like, we won't come after you, but this is your only chance. Like, you lay them down and you stop fighting, or you join, you know, the pro-freedom people, or you're going to die. Like, those are your choices. So you pick. So I don't know how that apparatus is working. You know, I saw a report right before we started recording saying that the leadership of Iran is very fractured right now, and that there's internal conflict going on. They've already taken out like at least 1 or 2 successors of the Ayatollah just today. They appoint a new one, they pop them. They appoint a new one, they pop them.
It's a new meaning to next man up.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like when we were kids and you'd be fighing a fake war and you'd be like, I'm a new guy. I'm a new guy.
Right. I respawn. Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
But I think the determination and the intelligence and the fire of the Iranian people is really impressive. The fact that they were willing to face down armed soldiers and protest and be killed in the tens of thousands because they're done. Now that the balance of power has tipped, they're only emboldened. They're not going to stop.
Right.
And I think they will prevail ultimately. And what's interesting is the leading guy, and he doesn't have majority support, but he has the single largest block of support. at about 31% approval, is the son of the former Shah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I've
he
seen
is
that.
pro-democracy. He's pro, technically, again, he would be a Shah. He's called Prince. He would be the king sort of Iran, but allegedly he favors elections and kind of, modernizing the country and all this kind of stuff. And he's been a unifying force.
Interesting.
So it'd be interesting to see if they wind up putting him in power. I don't know. I mean, it's a complicated situation, but I don't see us being able to let any portion of the existing regime continue to exist.
Not at this point.
No.
Right? You kicked the hornet's nest.
And I know that,
Right.
there are reports that we offered negotiations again after the first round of strikes and they turned us down. I saw something today, this afternoon, where Trump was like, they want to talk, so I'm willing to talk. But the thing is, there's no talking where they get to stay in power. That's
Sure.
my take. Like, if
Sure.
we let them stay in power, this was for nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's no way that can stand.
Yeah, I think this is what I think this is kind of what you've been getting at, what I've been thinking too, is that, this does feel quite different than, 1998. Or I'm just
Or
using
2003.
Right, I'm making dates up, right? But
Yeah.
it's like so much has changed. Europe is so much weaker. They're dealing with their own immigration problems. China's different, Russia's different, South America is different. Castro's gone. Like, I don't know. There's so much that's different that I am cautiously optimistic that this will signal the end of the mullahs. Cautiously optimistic. But I was also thinking,
I
you
think
mentioned
81% of the Iranian people are opposed to that regime.
Yeah.
So it's significant.
Yeah, so that's significant, but I think the other thing that the other like voice in my head, right? The other, looking at it, or hearing it from the other side or what have you, is remember when you brought up a childhood game? I'm going to bring up my own here, but we used to play these like massive games in our neighborhood of kick the can, right, or capture the flag. Pick you one, right? We would sort of divide up into teams, and we had the vulnerable item that you had to go get and knock out, but then you'd have to be careful about losing your flank. And then, so it was this game where, you had to risk in order to win and whatnot. But then, like, we all remember the concept of like, I'm on base, like you can't get me, like I'm on base.
Yeah.
Base only exists in children's games. There's no such thing. We can bolster home base, but it's not magic, right? It's not some sort of like magic protection or like, well, even though you're standing right next to me, you can't touch me because I'm on base.
Mhm.
And as long as I stay on base, like I can't be hurt. That's that's kids game stuff. And it was fun. I enjoyed playing that game. But, in the game that plays out heck, not even like just geopolitical arena, but just like, this is just the way the world works, right? That your base is safe in direct proportion to your willingness to guard it and to arm it and defend it. And the status quo of seeding terrorism all around the world, like it's just not tenable. And at a certain point, the guy's just going to squish the pesky little bug with his thumb, not only because he can, but in some kind of real way, he has to.
Who's the
he
guy in
must.
this scenario?
Well, the big guy in the United States of America.
The guy who says all your base belong to us.
Now that's deep lore. I love that. I love that. Right. But,
you have no time. You have no chance to survive. Make your time.
And so in these sort of prior iterations, it was all done in the spirit of protecting the post-war consensus. Now that it's not binding, I think there's a more willingness to sort of do the thing.
This is a very modern phenomenon you're describing.
What do you mean?
Well, so for example, when I spent my semester in Europe, went to Salzburg, And of all the castles I went to, the Festung Hohensalzburg was just, I mean, that place was amazing, right? Walls are like 6 feet thick. I don't remember how long it stood against various invasions, but I think it was like 1,000 years, right?
Wow, yeah.
The second airplanes were invented, it became completely irrelevant.
Yeah, right.
Because you can just go over the walls.
Yeah.
It could hold up to sieges. It could hold up to siege engines. But the minute you could just fly over and drop a bomb, everything changed, right?
Right.
The minute that immigrants could come over to the United States in large quantities with the intention of forming sleeper cells, that was very different than when you had to go through Ellis Island and you had to, and you had to go by ship, and there was no way to get 18,000, terrorist fighters into the U.S. 100 years ago, but you can do it now.
Right. And so this, to me, dovetails into another one of our things. One of our hobby horses here is AI, right? And technology and information. What does sovereignty mean in the age of AI? What does sovereignty mean in the age of surveillance, right? What is a border when Wi-Fi works? I mean, I think these are some deep, deep consequential questions that we have put off facing. And I don't pretend to have the answers.
Well, should we talk
disclosure.
about the thing that was the big story on Friday night before the bombing started?
Gosh, refresh me?
It was Anthropic losing their military contract. Yeah. So
crazy.
So
I don't believe it. But go ahead.
You don't believe what?
I think it's kayfabe.
I don't think it is.
I do.
All right. So let me lay out the scenario. So Anthropic is the maker of Claude. The CEO of Anthropic is a guy named Dario Amodei. He's big into this effective altruism stuff, which I don't really haven't gotten into it. Do you know what the tenets of effective altruism
don't worry about
are?
it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very rationalist.
But is it paternalistic hand-wringing over ethics? Like, what is it? Because it plays into this.
Doing the most good for the most people.
Okay.
That's
that actually helps a lot because that's going to frame this. So they have a $200 million contract that they get with the Pentagon. And this happened months ago, right? But all of a sudden, over the last couple of weeks, there's been this escalating tension between, I keep wanting to call it the Department of Defense, but it's gone back to being the Department of War, which I actually think is a smart move.
Yeah.
The idea was we stopped winning wars when we changed the name because our psychology changed. We're defending ourselves. We're not, But anyway, and the Department of War basically said, look, we need to have battlefield control over the AI. And Anthropic said, no. We are not going to compromise our ethics on certain things. And the two key issues that they pointed out were surveillance of American citizens, which, by the way, is already illegal. And
tell me when I can say something.
Hold on.
Keep going.
And
Keep going.
autonomous weapon systems that can fire with no human intervention, right? And they were like, these are the things we're not willing to compromise on. And the talks weren't fully public. Washington Post just put out a piece like a day or two ago, though, describing, the interaction was described by one Pentagon official as boiling down to, they had a hypothetical scenario where they're like, if there's an incoming nuclear warhead and, we need to take it out and we're using an AI powered system, do we have operational control? And Amodei is like, well, you'd have to call me and we'd work it out.
You got to be
No, that's what it said in the Washington Post piece. Now, Anthropic has denied that that's how it went, but the Pentagon says this was basically how the discussion went, which is why we put a hard line down.
What nation worth their shorts would
nobody would
cede that authority to friggin' Dario Amodei?
And so
God help me.
Palmer Luckey shows up. Palmer Luckey, if you don't know him, he's the guy, the kid, really, the boy genius who started Anduril, who started out making VR headsets, and now he makes missiles and drones and all this kind of stuff. And he's a defense contractor, really, really sharp guy, right? Yeah. And he said, what this comes down to is, who is calling the shots in a military situation? Is it the military bureaucracy that is controlled by an electorate, or is it an unelected CEO who has his own, principles and ethics about how things should should play out.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so as this debate is getting raw, because Pete Hegseth comes out and he says, all right, we've tried working with them. They're not going to. So now we're going to classify Anthropic as a supply chain risk. And in so doing, that means nobody who has a contract with the government can work with Anthropic anymore. That means Amazon. That means Google. That means they can't host their stuff on Amazon Web Service. Like, this could potentially cripple their company, right? And so Anthropic's freaking out, and they're going, wait a minute, that's not legal. You can't do that. This is against, Chinese companies like Hawaii and these other, companies that, they're foreign actors. This has never been used against a U.S. company. But the problem is, even if they fight it in court, which they're planning on doing, by the time they get to the end of it, they're toast.
Yeah.
They're toast because right now, none of those companies are willing to risk their government contracts to be on the wrong side of this legal battle.
Because you can't risk those government contracts. Like that, all of these companies were originally government contracts to frickin' begin with.
Right. And so basically,
Silicon
if you
Valley is the military-industrial complex.
Yeah. So if you want to boil this down to an argument, what it basically comes down to is, well, let me add one more piece before I do the synthesis. So everybody's arguing about this, and everybody's praising Anthropic for, aura farming.
Moral,
and for their moral positioning and all this kind of stuff. And then within hours, OpenAI announces through Sam Altman, as I said about Altman, Machiavelli entered the chat. I mean, I think he is a bad dude, right?
Me too. Yeah, me too.
But he played this right, and he said, we now have this contract with the U.S. government. We're willing to work with them through ChatGPT. And we asked for the exact same conditions, and the Pentagon agreed to them. We don't want surveillance of American people, and we don't want autonomous weapon systems, right? And everybody's like, how could this be? And the reason is because, and this is the distillation, Altman said, please follow the law and we'll work with you. Amadei said, we'll decide what the law is and whether you're interpreting it correctly. And in a battlefield situation, you cannot have an AI arguing with you about whether you can take the shot. And like Palmer Luckey went into all these complex battlefield scenarios. He's like, I do this. I supply weapons. He's like, there are times where something's phrased as defensive, but it's offensive. There are times where you have to bluff and you have to act like you're going to nuke somebody, but you're not, but you can't let them know. You create these ethical situations, and an AI has these strict guardrails, and they're hard-coded in, and it gets to veto your military choices.
I feel like everybody has to rewatch War Games.
Oh.
Remember Whopper?
I love that movie.
Would you like to play a game?
Movie.
I know you love that movie. That's like, that's deep lore. That's great stuff. I mean, but
that is the dark side of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It's the other side. That's so good. That's so good. I think it was his first movie too, by the way. But anyway, so okay, are you good?
Well, and last piece of this.
Yeah.
XAI. Everybody's like, why aren't we using Grok? XAI already has the same contract. They're just not talking about it.
Of course.
I asked Grok about it. They're like, not only do we have the contract, they just expanded Grok's use through classified systems like this week. Because Grok is like maximally truth-seeking, not going to get in the way, and Elon's not going to ask for final say. Because if you have these things, you have to be, human beings should be the ones controlling this. It shouldn't be hard-coded in, and you shouldn't have to call some geek out in California when seconds are going to determine lives to be like, can you turn off?
Right. Who may
the
or may not,
on this?
who may or may not be, involved with his several thruples and, polycules. I mean, like this is stuff drives me bonkers, right?
All right. Go off.
Okay.
Go off, Kale.
So Amadei is going to, he's standing on business over surveillance and autonomous weapon systems.
I hope you're about to say what I think you're about to say.
They all surveil. That's the model. It's all surveillance. They have everything. So them standing on like, well, we're not going to, it's against the population of the United States. Like, that's just a bridge too far. Who are you? Who are you kidding? That's crazy.
Well, on top of that, you've read his full essays.
Yes, I've read both of them.
He has zero ethical qualms about the fact that he's about to put millions of Americans out of work. He just shrugs and is like, well, we'll just have to figure it out.
Hey, but Steve, rest assured, he will not spy on me.
You. Yeah.
Great. Right. Now, in a couple of years, you'll stop spying on me because you've been spying on me since the beginning. I mean, this just,
And
I
autonomous
can't even
weapon
believe it.
systems, if there's a missile coming at a U.S. aircraft carrier, and it has a defense system that's AI powered because the AI is faster at identifying aerial threats, but it can't fire because it's autonomous and the guardrails say no. Like, what?
Yeah, I just don't even understand what that. It's like sending out a ranger on assignment, and like before he pulls the trigger, he's okay. So I've got the bad guy in my sights. Can I go ahead and pull the trigger? Like what?
Well, so Alex Karp is an interesting throw-in to all of this because so he's the very autistic CEO of Palantir who looks like Taika Waititi if you're not placing him.
He's bizarre. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, so he is extremely left, right?
Right.
And he got interviewed, and I don't know if it was interviewed before this or during the middle of it or whatever. But he was like, look, I basically have an advanced degree in progressive studies. I am as far left as I can be.
Yeah.
He's like, but war fighters, their lives depend on software, and the software can't get in the way, or they lose trust and everything goes to hell. And he's like, I didn't vote for this administration. I don't support a lot of the things that they do, but they have to be able to have operational.
Right. Okay. So then, is it possible that Amadei is doing this for other reasons? Like, is this a play to a different portion of the consumer base?
Well, I mean, it could be, but I think that's a hell of a gamble.
Okay.
Because personally, I suspect, I don't know that this is true, we will see the nationalization of at least one AI company in the next 5 years.
Yeah, AI 2027 said that unequivocally.
Because when it gets to the point where it is critical infrastructure, we've done it before. We've done it with railroads. We've done it with...
You could argue that it is now.
Yeah.
I think you probably can. And it's, again, we talked about this before, but the models that we don't see, the ones that they're working on in the actual labs, I'm pretty sure we're there.
And I had a long conversation with Grok, actually, because I was out working, like out of my apartment the other night when all this stuff was breaking. And so I did voice mode with Grok, and I was asking, what is going on with these stories? It was, that's what it was. I asked Grok, why doesn't the military develop its own AI? Why is it working?
Sure. Why is it outsourcing?
And what Grok said is
because it's not. Anyway, go ahead.
No. What Grok said is that DARPA, the Pentagon has poured billions of dollars into DARPA's attempts to create AI. But the problem is that the process for procurement and the contractor rules and all this kind of stuff is this agonizingly bureaucratic and slow process. And the AI firms are iterating updates every week. They're constantly churning out new stuff. They're offering massive salaries and stock options. They're bringing in the brightest minds in the world to work on this stuff. And the government can't compete with that because they can only offer you a GS-15 pay scale, which is like $120,000 a year. These guys are making millions off this stuff. And so DARPA has tried, they can't produce it. So we're stuck having to work with these private companies. And then you've got these guys who are like, well, I should be in charge then because I'm the CEO. And it's like, that's not going to work.
Yeah, that definitely passes the stiff test on that sort of first layer. But below that, come on, man. They're going to take it. Of course they are.
They will take it, but they haven't yet. And that's why I think this is going to inform that decision.
Yeah, I think so too.
Altman apparently was tweeting about this last night while the war stuff was going on, and I saw a summary of it, and he said he actually anticipates nationalization and thinks it might not be entirely a bad thing.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to be...
Well, he's like, if we get AGI, maybe governments should control that.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. That's why I injected it earlier on, these just notions of sovereignty, right? We're rethinking notions of sovereignty even absent the question of AGI, ASI,
What do you mean by that specifically, though? Like, what level of sovereignty are you talking about?
Well, in other words, what's a government? A government's an authority structure, and authority is not necessarily the smartest person, but it's the most competent group of people that you elect to put forward, like to rule over things, right?
Allegedly.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, well, what what does artificial superintelligence care about a senator? Does it care about a mayor? A magistrate? What are you even talking about? Right? So taking Amadei at his word, a small country with, a million superintelligences, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
That's going to replace the bureaucracy.
But and there's nowhere to hide from that. Like the globe is all of a sudden truly the digital blob at that point.
Yeah.
So who's in charge? Well, if it's smarter, better, more capable, and doesn't require sleep or food and doesn't die, guess who's going to be in charge? And this is why I steer into this sort of doomer loop, because it's like, I don't see a way through this. I really don't.
I mean, I've been saying for many years now that privacy is a pretense. People 100%. Talk about protecting your privacy. I'm like, you've been on the internet.
I'm going to cover up my webcam.
You've been on the internet for decades.
Yeah.
Like they already know everything they need to know about.
Guess who just got flagged for some like national intelligence like problems? Steve and Kale are talking. Hi, we're talking.
Right,
they heard the whole thing, right?
The fact that I saw a joke about it the other day about like, oh, you paused on this video of frogs mating and for 14 seconds, and so we're going to give you nothing but frogs mating, and the guy's like, I just sneezed. Like that was why that happened.
So right, and this is why we're going to have to talk about this genius show Pluribus, because I'm not done yet. So I'm doing my homework for you.
But you are watching it.
I'm doing my homework for you, but clearly this is a first-rate allegory. First-rate. I love allegory.
Yeah. Do you think if I hadn't suggested that it was an AI allegory, you would have caught it?
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't at first.
It's on my brain. It's like the network brain. Yeah, no. I definitely, I don't want to give myself too much credit. Would it take? I think I would have been.
Because it's poised as a kind of an alien show, right? And because I have aliens on the brain, I didn't catch it initially. And then I was like 5 episodes in and I'm like, this is about AI.
But there's a reading of the whole alien thing in which it's the same story. But at any rate, I don't have enough to say that out loud too much yet. I'm working on that one.
Yeah,
that
needs a whole structure to talk about.
I think that's real, brother.
And the thing is, it's a hard show to watch. Like it's an uncomfortable show
like
with an unlikable protagonist.
Yeah, she's awful.
But I mean, we should have known from Walter White that this is a Vince Gilligan show. And
yeah, that's true. That's true. It's true. All right. Well, look, I don't know where this is going myself. I am nervous about domestic terrorism. I think if there are indeed sleeper cells in this country and around the world, this would be the time where they would show out.
Like, I would not be surprised if we get off this recording and go look online and something else has happened.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, there are going to be people who their immediate reaction to that is going to be, well, that's exactly why we shouldn't have done this. But
right.
But I have a problem with that because it's like they're already here.
Yeah.
Like this, we didn't create this problem by doing this. All we did was lance the boil.
Right. So who's sovereign? Right? Are the sleeper cells ultimately sovereign? Is Iran ultimately sovereign in this way? Because if we blink too hard or if we get the alien upset, is it going to shake everybody? Like you can't live under those conditions.
No,
you just can't.
You can't. And so there's this thing that it's an analogy I've used for other things, like for leaving faith when my whole life it was fear of hell that kept me inside of faith. If you're in a hostage situation and somebody has a gun to your head, you're going to do everything you can to try to stay alive for a while.
Right.
But after you're in that hostage situation for long enough, you're going to say, look, either shoot me or let me go.
Yeah.
But I'm not sitting here listening to your bullshit for another second.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of where we are with Iran. And I think that's how we wound up here. 47 years of this.
Right.
1,000 Americans dead. All this stuff going on.
But the entire military ethos up until relatively recently, and I'm talking about the people who staff the Pentagon and the people who staff the State Department and the people who staff and the schools that they go to, which were funded by the government, and like all of this structure that it basically is created in the wake of D-Day. Sorry, VE Day, right? All of this scripting, all of this belief, it's ultimately a belief structure. All of this is going to have to change. People's whole careers were built up in a system, and they have a lot invested in not losing their faith in the system, right? So that's why I think your analogy is a really good one. You were talking about yourself there, but think about Pentagonism. Think about State Departmentism as a kind of ideology itself, independent of being an American or a Democrat or a Republican. Something about this is why I think Yarvin can be helpful in limited doses, right? There's something about the cathedral. There's something about the blob, right? That you can even kind of ironically poke at it from the inside, but you're not going to topple it because your entire world depends upon you not getting it.
There is an important analogy here across the board about the deconstruction of institutions. Something has happened to people where they are no longer saying, I'm willing to play by the old rules of the old game. I'm not going to rise through the ranks of seniority. I have skills. I expect to be hired for a certain amount. Or I'm not going to hold myself bound to secrecy because I'm part of some government bureaucracy. Or I'm not going to continue to be part of a religion just because my parents raised me in that religion. Like it's happening psychologically across the board.
Right. But we cannot underestimate the amount of people my age, I'm 53, and up, who are deep in this. They make a lot of money. Like the system works for them. They're not
going to be able to hold on much longer.
I know, but they're also not going to just be like, okay, you guys, you were right. It's so thick. And like, look, the Harvard Kennedy School is still minting people. There's still people coming up through the ranks on those elite levels. They're still getting those jobs, right? But there's been a sort of a stanching of the trickle down effect, all across the fruited plain. I think we can't underestimate. It's good to be part of the elite. It's great. Look, I see it every day, Steve. I live in this world. I'm not.
Yeah, I know.
I'm a servant. I'm a part of the servant class, right? And it's good. It pays. You get to go on vacations. You get nice cars.
But it's still part of the order that's going away.
Yeah, that's why it's going to be ugly.
And even to the point of one of the things Rubio said that really struck me is he said, why do we have so many bases in the Middle East?
Yeah, right.
It's because we're trying to contain Iran.
Right.
That's what it's really about. We have bases all over the place because Iran is the guy that's threatening everybody else. And so it's time.
Right.
But if you're looking at American retrenchment and withdrawal, and I don't know how fast we'll do it, I don't know how much we'll do it, but I don't even know that Trump is doing this with a conscious thought of, we're pulling back into the Western Hemisphere. I think he might be doing it for completely different reasons.
Yeah,
but
I don't
there
think
is this
I don't think it's a retrenchment. I don't think that doesn't fully make sense because you can't really, but I think it's a resetting. I actually, in one sense, you could say that this is a show to our allies that you need to crap or get off the pot.
And we didn't involve them in the intelligence.
Yeah, and that's gonna frost them,
and that's huge, though. But that's one of the things that's being attributed to our success is we didn't give them the opportunity to come up with a bunch of obnoxious legal objections that slowed us down.
Right. And that's
not that we're doing something unethical, but that they intentionally.
Yeah.
It's like trying to have a just war argument with a Thomist.
Gosh, stop. I know.
It's like, I think this was a just war even by Catholic principles, but we got guys out there like Fezer who are saying it's not, and it's like, and it becomes very pedantic, and it's like, you just get bogged down in that crap because there's no right answer. There's only interpretations of a code.
Yeah. So it's not retrenchment. I'm gonna have to think a little bit more about this one. You know what I mean? It's a resetting of something. It's not like Americans are going to like take their ball and go home. Ultimately,
well, I think eventually we might.
That's interesting. All right,
but that's a longer term. So
yeah.
Right now we can't afford to.
Well, right. I mean, we have to rebuild home. But anyway, let me think about that one. That's definitely worth a deeper dive, a deeper chew on.
All right, man. Well, keep on monitoring.
Yeah, dude, it's been great. See you next time, brother.
Try to get this up as fast as I can.
I know.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.
Yeah.
Those look promising. Hello there, friends. If you're enjoying monitoring the situation, do me a favor to press the like and subscribe buttons on your viewing screen. Have you done it yet?
Wasn't that easy?
Every single like, comment, and subscription sends a signal to YouTube's clever algorithm. This program is well worth watching. It helps the show appear in front of many more viewers. And that, friends, is how your support helps us grow this program and bring you even more fascinating shows in the future. Thank you so much for your compliance.
Give me your heart, honey. Give me your heart, honey. Give me a chance to talk about